All right, hi everybody. SIG Automation Package Management Subproject Meeting, March 30th. I will share screen. Share this window. Okay. All right, great. Let's get started. So just a couple of things today from my point of view, but I haven't actually had a chance to catch up on what happened in the last meeting. So maybe other than looking at the board and what Bala said yesterday in the SIG automation meeting. So maybe that's sufficient. What I wanted to start with was, given that we've moved into this execution mode, I'm thinking that we should cut this meeting time to 30 minutes. I'll still keep the twice a week cadence, and then we'll decide if that's too much in another week or two. But the idea is, in my mind, that we move this to just like really a scrum almost. So 30 minutes should be more than enough. Any thoughts on that from other folks?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
Strongly supported.
Okay, excellent. And maybe we'll start that today. Great. So then the only other thing I have for today is to start looking at what we're doing, what progress we're making. As we move this to simply tracking status, obviously we'll discuss some things in the meeting, but what I would suggest then is, when we do need to do like a more in-depth design discussion or something like that, we either in the meeting say, hey, okay, people stay over for the second 30 minutes if they can, if they're interested in this topic, and we spill over that way, or we set up ad hoc things on Slack. So that would be kind of the logistical way we would handle things going forward. Okay, so yeah, so let's take a look. This is the sprint board for this subgroup right now. Let's take a look at what we have to do. Why don't we start with the in progress items? And well, we could do a traditional Scrum. We would go around person to person and they'd say what they're working on. If they're, some people might be just observing, given it's an open meeting. Or alternatively, we can go through the tasks. I think it might be easier, since we have an open meeting with other people in it, it might be easier to go through the tasks, but anybody feel free to chime in at any time and say what you think. So I'm going to suggest we start with the in progress items. On this one, so this is an ask from SIG Release, what the test bed should look like. And so, Wim, did you have any additional thoughts here beyond what I put? Do we want to? I mean, we can just.
I think what for me is a bit strange. What are we trying to do? Because for me, most of this is covered with our Ansible playbooks. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, a lot of it probably is already covered. So this is more of a, let's document that. Let's make sure it's what we want, and then we'll
because so I just to give you a point. The way we build the Ansible playbooks is that how many nodes doesn't matter, which CNI you use doesn't matter, which Kubernetes version you use doesn't matter. It's all configurable.
Right, but they need to set up a test bed that runs the prow jobs, periodics or whatever. So they just want to know what they should use.
Okay, so it's just for one. Okay, so one thing, because for me the question was, I was trying to clarify what this means, but I think Victor was is on holiday or is in somewhere. It was unreachable so far, and for me the question was strange because we explicitly built the setup environment in such a way that we don't have any of these dependencies, or that we can make it flexible. So what you're saying is, okay, what is the representative configuration to be used? Okay.
Yes. What should they use in their periodic jobs? It's going to execute a bunch of tests, like our integration test bed.
Now, for me, there is two sets of tests. It depends for which ones, because for the let's say the management cluster, you can basically build a configuration that is just a single management cluster, and you don't so just install ports and stuff like that, and you can even do that today, right? So in other words, for me, it depends a little bit for which type of tests, because for some tests I want a full bed, for other tests I just want a very trimmed down.
So there's as far as I know, and Vish, maybe you can chime in here. I think there's two particular things, right? There's unit tests are going to be run on every PR. And then there'll be, as far as I know, the plan is just to have a single integration test environment for end-to-end tests. But if you want a second one that's just management cluster tests, so we don't, it's just all about how much resource we burn and how much time it takes.
It will be way quicker, right? Because setting up a cluster takes at least 1 or 2 minutes in kind. Right?
Okay.
So it takes time. So I would hope that we have certain tests, because you can do all the hydration and stuff like that in in the management cluster, right? And just see that the Git repo contain the right resources, and you're done, right? You have an end-to-end test. And then there is a second test, which is really the end-to-end. And in that, so that for me, all the questions that I had is that I would say for management cluster only, just put a single management cluster with all the necessary resources. And then for end-to-end, I would say, I mean, I think it's like 3 or 4, one management and then 3 other clusters or something like that, what we typically use. And then we have 3 networks that interconnect them.
So let's discuss it on the issue. I think we could suggest we do a management cluster only test, maybe even for every PR. And then we do a periodic that's end-to-end and includes building edge clusters and making sure that the eventual things are running on them, right? That would be for the bigger end-to-end periodic daily or whatever it is test. So okay, that sounds good. Let's discuss that more.
I'll add it in. I was trying to reach out to Victor, but
just to add a few more points, if you don't mind. So since in the workshop it was only about UPF, now we are talking about EMF from SNF here too. So from a testing perspective, end-to-end testing perspective, that's also something that we need to figure out and add. How are we going to configure those in the end-to-end scenario? Like how many UPFs per SMF or AMF are we just going to do with one each at this point of time? And what is the configuration, the networking configuration of all those intercluster different interfaces? I'm not an expert, but there are a lot of N-star interfaces. So things like that. So I think probably that may be also the spirit of the question that Aravind is asking.
Yeah, I think that we should write up a bunch of test scenarios for like what we want, some end-to-end tests we want to do, like, multiple clusters, multiple different cardinalities between the different functions maybe. But I think that there's like, at some point, that makes sense. We should write up but let's take it one step at a time, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, we'll start with the simpler tests, and then we can always build more complex scenarios and make sure that they all work.
From an end-to-end perspective, at least one of the questions I asked in the previous call with Orange was if they actually, the successful deployment, whether they actually use the same workshop VM setup. So seems like yes. So which means our test infra for end-to-end test to get it all working, we could still be doing on a single VM and using kind clusters. So that is that piece I know from an infra perspective. That's good enough, I guess. But then the test cases, of course, like you said, you and Bala are talking, we need to figure out the different ones. So
and eventually like run a call through there or whatever. I assume that I know they were talking about doing something like that.
And also you mentioned about integration. I mean, integration tests and end-to-end tests are 2 different things. In general, integration tests can still be run using either Podman or Docker Compose is what I believe. And end-to-end tests, I think we will definitely need a VM. So just want to clarify that. Sometimes integration and end-to-end tests are used interchangeably. So I want to call that out. So.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah. So okay, that sounds good. Let's follow up on that on the issue. Design proposal. So I have a start of it here. This week, unfortunately, has been pretty crammed for me. I'll try to get some more updates in there today or tomorrow, but most likely that's going to really progress next week. Free 5G UPF package. Is this one? So there's a PR for this. Are we just waiting on reviews? What's the status here, Wim?
I thought this one was merged, not.
Oh, this one is merged. Okay.
Wait a minute. I think you merged it. Wait, let me check.
I did merge it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's merged. Yeah.
So this is
all
done?
three are merged. The other three are merged. So all of three are merged.
Okay. So does it not automatic? I thought it automatic. Yeah. Okay. It automatically closes it, moves it when you close it. All right. So this one's merged too. There was some. Okay. Somebody sent Olivier. Somebody sent a review.
Yeah, I just made a comment. When I was looking at it, I think these are all three, right? The AMF, SMF, and UPF. And I think if you go to my comment, I think that one was, at least by the name of the file, it appears to me that was meant to be AMF instead of SMF.
Yeah, it looks like it's probably. Yeah.
Did I make a mistake? Yeah. Okay, I'll fix it then.
Yeah.
Did you make an issue, Olivier?
I didn't. I was supposed to help out. I didn't have remember when we had the last call. I wasn't in the repo, so yes. I did not. Sorry.
Okay, but I'll have a look.
It was confusing to me as well that it was merged, but I was looking like it was still in progress. So.
It's just that's just that I missed it. Okay.
I would like to propose that before anything gets merged, can we at least have at a minimum 2 reviewers? That way, the rework can cost us.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what we
should do
is, so that comes down to PROW setup. Like what we should do is PROW should have a, I don't know if you can set a rule like that, but I would think you could.
I think we could. We should. I think we know other projects have that. So
yeah.
I'm not sure about Pro, of course. Yeah. But that would be good because I know there's a tendency to merge it. We want it, but there's also like developing the capabilities of the community, right? So that we all become familiar. So
yeah, one of the things is, you bring a great point. That's one of the things that we actually, Arvind and I wanted to specify in the document. Yeah, I don't know whether how much it can be done in Pro, and Rado is our expert there, and Rado and Arvind will have to figure out how we need to configure that.
Okay. Yeah, so let's see if we can do that.
Until then, request is let's have 2 reviewers at least, please, manually.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, then with those merged, we should be able to do this one. Liam?
Yeah, it's good progress already, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, ball is moving fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of took this one because it probably involves, this is kind of an aggregation of the other things. And I was listening to Aravind's presentation yesterday on the meeting, so I guess I can work off that. So I'll have some time to work on this tomorrow, John.
Awesome. So in his talking about the topology controller. So remember I talked about like layering. So this is really just a package like the one I linked here. That it should be a fairly simple package. But what it'll do is, if you recall in the meeting I did last week, if you actually go through and like you might see, I mean, even looking at the other packages, I'm like, well, the configuration for the config file is going to be wrong, right? Like, so that's something we have to figure out. We're gonna surface problems. The main goal of this is to surface problems. So when you run into problems, just put them in an issue, and we'll raise them. So.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so this is implementing what I'm trying to document here. And so for those of you, it looks like we got some other folks interested in working on it. What I would ask is we can put it in progress. I would ask that you go look at what I have in the proposal so far and review that, because it's very much just under review right now. I've got a bunch of comments to myself about, back and forth to myself about maybe this is a better way, maybe that's a better way. So I'd love input on that design, which is what we'll need in order to get where. And it's very much in line with that same discussion I had last week of like, trying to surface those problems and then look at strategies for solving those problems. So that's probably the best place to start. And then next week, hopefully we can actually work on this. I think there's probably.
So I put a comment there, just wanted to make sure. I know Wim is ahead of me, but since you're in the issue, I wanted to bring this. So there were multiple people interested on this one, this particular story that we are raising, but there was some concern about how and where it's going to be implemented. If it is directly in the porch, then I don't know whether they'll be able to contribute because of the CLA stuff. But if it's going to be implemented in FEO first and then move to porch, then I think the contributors that are signed up for, they could be directly working because they have signed the CLA for FEO. So that was a more of a logistical thing, John.
Right.
This particular story, I wanted to bring to your notice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I prefer not to fork things if we don't have to, but if we have to, we can. But I don't know how does that work? I don't know how that. Honestly, I don't know if you contribute to a fork that's in Nefio and then we upstream that. I guess that's just fine, like because it's all open source. I don't know. It's very. Confusing.
The question is, I think, I had the similar for me, but it's not a problem that you went first, but I had a similar question. But one thing that you can do, the question is how the code works, John, because in some of the things that I have done myself at the moment, I actually have extended methods into porch stuff, right? In kept, which are normally in the kept package, but I basically put them in Nefio because we have this problem that we cannot do it in the CLA. So it depends on what type of functionality you add. You could do it in Nefio. So the question of the people when they discussed it was, can it be done outside of Porch or of that package, even if it is an extension of it? And it depends on the software architecture. It's possible or not. I don't know.
I don't know how we would do that this would be built into the package variant API and the package variant controller, the way I'm writing it up.
Okay.
So
that's difficult.
Now, so what we would do is, we would fork that and develop our own controller, and that's a mirror of it, but a Nefio package variant, and then we can take those eventually functionality and upstream it into Porch. That wouldn't be terribly difficult to do. It's a little bit awkward as like Natasha yesterday, pushed a PR for package variant to improve some things. So, you run into potential conflicts, but I can coordinate with her pretty closely. So, that's a possible way of doing it. So why don't we take that under consideration? I think the design proposal we can still work on in the Porch repo, and then we can decide, hey, we're going to implement this in Nefio and upstream it later if we need to do that. So yeah, it's frustrating, all this legal nonsense, and I'm still working on the last internal sign off for getting Porch in the queue for CNCF, which will take like 8 months anyway once it's in the queue for the CNCF process. So it's frustrating. I don't have the sign off internally yet to do that. I don't know if I should say that on a recorded call, but so be it. Not that there's anybody pushing against it. It's just difficult to work through the process. Okay, so yeah, let's discuss that further as we get closer. The first thing we need to do is get the design proposal done, which I'd like to have done by, say, our next meeting on Tuesday. And then, I don't know that we'll get the whole thing done in a week. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Right.
So Tal had his hands raised. I think.
I'm sorry, I can't see the hands at the same time. I've got
Oh, it's okay. I think John covered all the issues, so I have nothing to add. I'll just note it's an issue, right? It's hanging over all of this. It's not a trivial technicality. Porch right now, the copyright is owned by Google. It's a different CLA than FEO. It's an issue, right? So there isn't a solution right now, but as John said, we're working towards a solution.
Yeah, worst case solution, if we need to fork for R1 and converge afterward, we can always do that. But it's just always dangerous, right? It's always dangerous to fork because you can diverge and everything go to hell.
It would not be trivial, John, because the TSC would have to sign off on basically taking code that's under the copyright of the NetFEO authors to allow it to be moved maybe to the Google authorship, assuming that Porch is still owned by Google at that time. So anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but it is not trivial. We will have to find a solution.
Well, it's all Apache 2 license, so we should be able to fork it.
So for
we could, but then the question is, could Porch include components that are not copyrighted by Google and not signed by the CLA? I don't know this, so
I don't know how that works either. Yeah.
So just to close the point, John, since you were not in that meeting, so the idea is the interested parties, and mainly Istvan and all, they were interested. So they said if it is done in FEO, they could contribute, but if it is Porch, it's fine. If we were to do directly in Porch, it's absolutely fine. It's only that they will not be able to contribute. That was the sentiment in that meeting. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Yeah, and we certainly want people to contribute. So
yeah,
SD, yeah.
Exactly, that's true. And the other thing is that I wanted to say that if the problem is with forking Porch and we want to avoid that, then what we can do is, for the time being, we can create some NetFEO kind of package variant that will create a Porch variant and do the injection afterward. So basically do a wrapper. I know that it is technically not that elegant, but it at least avoids forking the Porch repo. So we could still use the Porch package variant as is and create a super CRD around it.
That's true. We could, yes, we could. That's one option. Yeah, that's an option. Okay.
From a pure technical point of view, I wouldn't do that, of course. I'm just trying to work around.
It's a reasonable suggestion.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments there? Okay. All right. So we'll end up having to deal with that next week. Okay. Yes. So Ganesh, are you here?
Oh, I will go after Ganesh if Ganesh is here. Again, there was a point, John, on this one. So basically, we wanted your input also here. This particular story, the UI. I think me and Wim put some points there. So we need to evaluate what changes that need to be done, and we also understand Chris may not be able to. At least my understanding is, I don't know how much cycles he can put, but Ganesh and Sahir, they want to do it, but they want to maybe first work with you and Chris to understand what's the changes that we need to do, how feasible it is, things like that. So we need some inputs there.
So actually, yes. So I actually, Ganesh reached out to me. I don't see him in the list. He reached out to me on Slack, and we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 8. So anybody who's interested is welcome to join us. I haven't set it up with Zoom and all that, but I could actually do it on Zoom and record it. I probably should do that. And I've invited Chris. I'm not sure if he can make it at 8 tomorrow, but we at least will have a discussion about it. I don't know what we want to do. I think with R1, I know what we want to do. I know what we could do in R1, given limited resources. What I'd like to do as sort of a minimum, but then I think there's a bigger question of like, what is this UI? What is the future of the UI? Like right now, for the workshop, we took the UI that was built for Porch, and we just used that. And Chris made some branding changes and added a few things that were Nephos workshop specific, some of which are now obsolete and we'll have to pull out. And then, you know, we would want to add package variant set. But beyond that, like if we do a topology controller, we might want screens for the topology controller. If we do a, you know, in R2 or 3 or 4, we might do something much more sophisticated. I don't know what that needs to look like. That's again probably where we need to get. I would love input from our, you know, end users, as opposed to from me, who's kind of clueless as far as what's useful. So that's a longer term picture. I think I can sort of push forward for what is in R1, just because of the limited time and scope. We would only do the minimum unless somebody, you know, unless we have more resources. So let me know, reach out to me on Slack if you want. I had originally just set up, not thinking, I had just set up a Google Meet, but I can set it up as a Zoom call and use the community calendar. So I'll just take a note of that. Okay. All right.
So, and then obviously after the meeting, this will be updated, right? With the notes, John, this story.
Yeah, we'll update this issue with the notes, and hopefully it'll move to in progress. Hey, that would be nice.
Sure.
Okay, packages. So this is so originally I was thinking that kind of the install process and everything is part of SIG release, but then we looked at the actual definition from the TSC, and it's supposed to fall in SIG automation. And so, and that apparently was understood by SIG release. So it was kind of falling through the cracks. So we have some of this already. I think like we have the system package and we have some things like that. So the question here comes down to, you know, do we, you know, we need to take ownership of that piece, and somebody needs to make sure that it all works for R1 because it's set up right now for the workshop. So it looks like looks like Vish and Ravi. So I'd like to hear your thoughts or where we stand with this one.
Wait, when is the workshop? Where?
The workshop, the previous workshop, I'm saying.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. We did this for, we have like Nephio system, Nephio web UI, and one other thing that kind of is a package that includes this. And I know Victor was working on a CLI tool that like will just do the installation, basically what's listed in how we set up the workshop. So, you know, this would be the tool used by people to, you know, actually provision Nephio in the wild. So, Vish and Ravi.
Yeah, John, so I was thinking of this, you know, considering there's already existing scripts there. And because I had used it from basically I had followed the scripts to do my own demos and all internally. So I was kind of was kind of basically looking at what those deltas would be, and I could definitely validate it. Again, I think this is also depending on, it's a dependency on the existing software being ready, and so probably there is other dependencies here as well. Yeah, but yeah, I think as and when we have those software. But I think last meeting when we were discussing there, I think Bala was suggesting to kind of break that down into further pieces, because we already have some existing pieces, and to see what the new components are. I think that would be a good start.
So I'm going to move this to in progress. I'm going to ask that you and Vish work with Victor and Bala and kind of figure out, break this into as many pieces as you need, close this one or not, whatever. Just take ownership of that. The main thing is, right, we need to separate out like the Ansible scripts set up a whole environment. But if I want to go and say I just spun up a GKE cluster and I want to install Nephew on it, then I'm not going to use the Ansible scripts because they do something different. So and I think that Victor's already kind of doing that, but you guys figure out how you want to proceed with that and go ahead and take ownership of that.
So I
can
need to link.
Can you add some acceptance criteria here so that will actually help guide us? Because the reason I think me and Ravi are there is because we are familiar with some of these things and we know we could help out. So
yeah,
the idea is, what exactly is the outcome of this, in a sense, like, because we already have things there. So if there's a couple of pointers that can be added as an acceptance criteria for this, that will help us.
So one thing, John, what I did is, so this is, if you see, I think I made this a subtask of installer.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I made this a subtask of installer. So, and there is a overarching installer stuff, like John said, Victor is working on. I think we should get together with Victor. And Arvind also asked me this question: what is the difference between this and the sandbox story that we are doing? So this is I told him exactly the same thing what you said, John, here now. It could be, we should be able to point to some K8s cluster. It could be GKE, or it could be just any Kubernetes compliant cluster of that of a particular version that we support, and they should be able to install Nephew components on top of it.
Exactly. So somewhere here there's an issue.
Yeah, I think it was there in installer. Yeah, this is, if you see, this is a subtask for that. So I clarified the installer requirements there. I think like John said, Victor is doing some progress. Probably Ravi and Vish, probably we should get together with Victor, where he is at, and trying to then figure out how exactly all these things can piece together.
Yeah, but for that particular task, is there a certain output you are expecting, or is it still needs to be groomed more, in the sense, like,
I think there's more that has to be, like, so what we have today is a Nephew packages, Nephew web UI, Nephew config thing. That might be adequate, right? Those might be right. There's a few issues I think that need to be worked out with that, like what is the tagging and release process for those? So far, we've been just treating them as packages, and so we've been tagging them as V1, V2, V3, the packages. And that may be fine, right? I just don't like when you change the underlying software. So right now, like Nephew system V6 or whatever's in there is going to be associated with some particular, it's going to have a deployment in there, and it's going to have some particular tagged binary image, container image. And so if we want to update those, we create a Nephew project V7, and that our Nephew package is V7, Nephew system V7. And that works, but does that work for interim builds, right? Every single build. Do we want to have a Nephew, and this gets back into the build. This isn't exactly the same thing, but it's related, right? It's adjacent. Like, do we have a Nephew packages dash staging repo and have a Nefio system staging that, a Nefio system repo, Nefio system package in that we can update daily and or even use as latest tags. Or so I think there's some more thought that needs to happen into how the development and release process for these packages happens. That we haven't given it that thought. We've given it the thought, or the way it's structured right now is really from a, oh, this is all done, and we're going to package it up and we're going to distribute it. But I think there's maybe, we don't want to have necessarily every single interim build have a new publicly facing package. Does that make sense? Wim?
John, I have a quick question. Should this not be addressed in release management somehow? I mean,
it should be. It ties,
yeah.
Yes, yeah, it should be. It ties directly to release management, but I just, because
no, it's an issue. I mean, the way I do it right now, I take a baseline and then I update the baseline, right? So with the cap tool, but I have the feeling that this should be addressed by the release management team, because this is something. If we go for R1, we need to figure this out anyhow, right there.
And a lot of these are the same people, so that's good.
No, sure. I'm just trying to say, okay, it seems to be a problem more for release management here than.
Yes, but it is, yes, but we do need to create these packages, right? So that's
I don't disagree with it. I just wonder, Bala, is anyone tracking that in the release management? Do you know?
Yeah, I think this is something we need to do. I think there are a few tasks that we sign. We have a few issues in the release sprint too. One of the thing is the release process, I think, if I remember. So we need to figure out a few things, Wim, collectively.
No, I'm thinking. My question is this an issue? Is that an issue that tracks this in release management? That was my question.
The release process, right?
No, this is not the release process. This is actually how do we manage releases itself, and how do we create the packages around it, and what have you. So
describing overall like branching strategy and things like that, but I don't know if he specifically talked about artifact distribution. Right? Like if you think about, that's what all these are. They're artifacts, just like a binary image or a container image, and so.
And they need to package together, right? So, and what is the way to do it? So I think it's better to take an explicit issue for this and have some team work on it, because otherwise I'm afraid that by the end of the cycle, we are not, we still have the discussion, but no action.
Sure, Wim. I'll make sure if there is an issue. If there is no issue, I'll make sure go create it, and then I'll probably work with you and John to massage it a little bit more. I'll take that action.
Okay.
I think Then we have and we get an owner. We don't have an owner, maybe that, but at least it's tracked in the right place, and then we can figure it out how to deal with it. It's probably the same people. I do agree with you, but yeah.
Yes.
But we need to track it properly. Absolutely.
Exactly. I'll make sure I'll add that. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
So just to summarize, I mean, so we have this kind of replicated as an action item or work item in some other track other than package management, and somebody else would also be part. I mean, I can always help, as I said, like, because I didn't know the entire dynamics of it. I thought it was like, okay, one summit, we had this set of scripts and it's a one-stop shop, but this entire kind of, it has to be connected to some CI/CD pipelines and all. I don't have a background with that. But as I said, like if somebody is leading that whole framework aspect, then I could definitely help out.
Yeah, sync up with, so there's two parts. There's the whole artifact release pipeline, and that's SIG release. But there's also the installer and the packages associated with installer. This is really about the packages that the installer uses for the installation. And so Victor is working on the installer. So I just tagged you on the installer issue, and Bala made them link to those two issues. So I think work with Victor and Vish and Bala on that piece, and then the release management team will work on how the artifact distribution pipeline works.
Okay, sure. So Bala, do you plan to kind of have kind of another subgroup, and we can just a breakout meeting on this so that we can sync up on what the next steps are? Or
Yeah, like John said, two separate things. For the release one, yes, we will create a separate issue. And I think Victor may be back next week. Ravi, I'm gonna ping him and then we can get together. I think he's still out of the country, I think. I may be wrong. Sure. He may be back. Probably, I think he'll be back next week. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Okay. We can sync up offline. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, thanks.
Jean-Marie?
Yes, on this installer, what is our general strategy? Is it to make the quote unquote standalone installer and very configurable, or is it to make it very opinionated and in a way that it is creating a very opinionated Nefio management cluster whose only role is to deploy the actual Nefio management cluster and therefore having Nefio deploying Nefio?
So this is an open question, I would say. What Victor has so far, I believe, installs the basic components, which are like Porch and the IPAM controllers and things like that, and the web UI. I think for R1, that's more or less what it could be, but I think over time, like if I think about it, if I wanted to demo this, say internally, I would want to demo it running on GKE, using KCC, which is our KRM driven infrastructure thing, to be able to create other clusters. Using Free5G is fine for me. I would want to demonstrate the IPAM piece and maybe the VLAN piece, but I can't do Multis on a GKE cluster anyway. We have other kinds of clusters I might be able to do that with. So like I'm going to want to make choices about certain components in addition to the basic Nefio management cluster functionality. So eventually, whatever installer we have needs to take that into account. I would actually suggest to the team building it that we use we bootstrap the core Nefio piece, which is the core pieces in, and then we use a package, and we allow the installer to point at a different package so that I can, or a set of multiple packages, I don't know, so that I can go and modify the contents of that package to modify what gets installed. So it's
that you can iterate that package.
Yeah, so I can exactly. So I can go in and say, I want to choose this as my cluster provisioner. I want to include GKE, EKS, AKS, and I don't know, Kubernetes cluster provisioning projects, and be able to provision any of those kind of clusters. So I think it's actually a use case for what we want to do, is setting up our own system in a flexible way. So, but I don't think that's where we'll be in R1. R1, all I really need is something that lets me point it at any cluster and get the components installed for the management cluster. And then I probably separately have to provision any infrastructure provisioning layer, because I still have a stretch goal in my mind in R1 to be able to provision clusters, workload clusters out of this, but that's a stretch goal for R1 anyway. So I would suggest, if you have thoughts and opinions, get involved with the team building it, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else we want to discuss? We've gone through the whole board for this, and it sounds like we're making progress. There are probably other items or but I think this is a good start. If people are thinking they have more, they haven't signed up for anything, or they have more time and energy, I'm happy to take a look at the backlog. Oh, Paolo, your hand's up.
Yeah, two things, John. Sorry. Yeah, lose my chain of thought. So one is, yeah, I will, when you said backlog, that's my action item next week I will, whatever the sprints that you define in the execution block, I will, in the way you defined, myself and Venkat also spoke this morning. I will go ahead and create all those issues, and I will assign it to those sprints as you specified to start with. So we will have the backlog. And
Okay.
then obviously we can course correct as we move along during our meetings, as we progress, etc. I move issues out, bring issues in. So I will set up all those things with the rest of the release, R1 release. We'll do that across all the subgroups. The other thing I wanted to ask is there seems to be some GitHub issue permissions with the community members. So for example, Ganesh asked that particular installer story, not the installer, the UI story that we discussed. He wanted to add some of his colleague, but he's not able to assign, even though we assigned it to him, but he wanted to add somebody else. He was not able to do it.
Yeah.
So there are issues like that. So that I wanted to bring that to your notice.
Yeah, Wim raised that as well on Slack, and I actually just fixed it just before this meeting. So what I did is there's an ability to, so if you go to our team now, I just assigned to the whole SIG automation team, which is a lot of people, triage privileges, which allows you to do labels and all that stuff on all the issues and PRs. Now, I think that's fine for now, but eventually that should all be managed via PROW, so that we don't have to give permissions to everybody. Right now, we're still relatively small. I mean, 27 is not tiny, but you know, like Kubernetes with 1,000 people, they're not going to do that, right? Instead, it's all managed via PROW.
Yeah.
So PROW should let you do like /assign, /label, /retitle to change the title, things like that. But we don't, it's not fully set up yet, and we're relatively small. So I just gave everybody permission. So if you still have trouble like that, let me know. But in theory, everybody in this team should be able to do that now. That said, I do still have a bunch of people who never accepted their invitations. So if you're on this list,
Akesh, okay, Akesh, he did not accept, okay, because he was asking me for putting him on the guy above, with two.
Okay.
Okay. And it's his VMware email?
Whatever he's got set up in.
Okay, I'll tell him that he has to accept. Yeah. Now what
I have to re-invite him now because it's expired. Okay. Retry.
Okay, just to re-invite because I was assigning him to some task and I didn't find him. I was going to raise it to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
By the way, I still see it. Yeah, sorry, Bala, you are still on. Go ahead.
No, Wim, please go ahead. This was the point I wanted to.
Yeah.
About
because I still see a different. I still see a difference between the repos, John. So, for example, I created a bunch of PRs, right? And I was assigning the PRs to my issue or to my board, right? But for the API repo, I don't have all the labels. I cannot link it to the board and stuff like that. So that is still in the API repo. Just after, I just did it during the meeting here.
Huh. So let's see.
I can share my screen if you want.
Sure. I mean, the labels might not exist, right? Like you have to create. This is where, they just don't exist in that repo. So the problem.
And I cannot even assign it. If you try to assign this one to one of the issues in the board in R1, I was able to assign to project, but to milestone. So like the slices, so the sprint 1 and so on.
Oh, the milestone you weren't able to. That's probably also created per repo.
Yeah,
It
that's
seems
right.
so. Yeah.
Yes.
So we should try to replicate these labels on these repos if you don't mind, or if I don't
Yeah,
know how
so
to do it.
there's
Yeah.
actually, you
Maybe
can do it manually, but there's so Rado, so I have an issue. This is, I don't know exactly what it does. How do I find them?
So to your point, John, that's exactly what I did. I created the same milestones on both SIG Release and Nephew.
Okay.
So manually. So I mean, Wim, for the
For the time being, it's
immediate
manual?
time
Okay.
being, I can work with you on that. I can help you on that.
Okay, I was just trying to assign all my PRs to the right things, because then you see, you track the progress and it's all together and da. So I just wanted to make sure that everything is up to date on this board. So it's one way to manage everything. So yeah, I could do everything except for the API repo. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, here, this is it. So there's this tool called Label Sync from the Kubernetes project that syncs labels across.
repos.
Yeah, and so it looks like actually yesterday Rado looked at this and thought that's a good idea. So I don't know if it's a priority. We might want to just let him know.
He told me that he's already working on it, John.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Cool.
That doesn't do milestones. It just does labels, it looks like, but that's a start.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep in touch on Slack. I'm going to reduce this meeting to 30 minutes. If we hit the end of the meeting and there's like topics we want to discuss, I'm going to reserve the time in my own calendar for that. But I don't, I think like Vish said, if we have it booked for an hour, we'll probably use an hour. If we have it booked for 30 minutes, hopefully we'll keep it to 30 minutes. So, and then if we, so anyway, Anne.
I wasn't aware of this meeting, so Vish reminded me. Is there a place I can track the meetings? I don't think the wiki is up to date.
It's all in the
on the calendar now.
Is in the calendar now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And I'll add the one we're going to do an 8 a.m. tomorrow morning ad hoc. I guess I'll just book it for an hour, but should I invite the group? I don't know. People don't. Whatever. Okay. You all know about it now. All day. No, definitely not all day. Okay. Thank you all. You don't need to watch me do this. And I'll talk to you all later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and John, if that calendar can be updated, I use that.
I will update it. It's
if anything. Yeah.
For me, it takes 24 hours to show up in my Google Calendar unless I delete the calendar, unsubscribe and resubscribe to it. But I will definitely add it. I'll try to use it regularly. I mean, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Everyone, have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.